During the financial crisis, J.P. Morgan actually got bigger. They picked up Bear Stearns, they picked up WaMu. Bank of America also got bigger. They picked up Merrill Lynch. So the too big to fail banks got even bigger. Can we break them up? We heard from Sandy Weill this week, and he said that the big banks need to be broken up, and he was the architect of some of the biggest banks out there.
It brings chutzpah to a whole new level for Sandy Weill to be saying that, but he's right. Of course, he's fundamentally right. And look, that's part of the problem. You know, the reaction to the financial crisis was to take a problem that already existed, which is all the perverting incentives that come with too big to fail, both on the regulator side as well as in the market side, and make it worse. And look, Secretary Geithner was one of the prime architects of some of those mergers to make too big to fail banks even bigger. So big problem, now a bigger problem, and it will bring down our financial system again. To think otherwise is to ignore the first rule of markets, which is incentives. And the incentives right now, because of the government guarantee, implicit and explicit, with all that ability to take risk, it's going to create more risk, and there's going to be another bursting of a bubble, and what's going to be left is a crisis that will dwarf, I believe, the one in 2008. And the only way is to get tough with the banks and start breaking them up, and we need to do it soon.
I thought after the crisis that Jamie Dimon was one of the good guys. People kept referring to him as the last sane banker, the one who really kept it all together, and that's why he got bigger. Are there any other good guys on Wall Street? Any other bankers that you admire?
See, I think that's part of the problem, is thinking of them as good guys versus bad guys. You know, you really have to look to their incentives, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's incentives that are going to determine what people do in life. I mean, across psychology, sociology, whatever it is. And the bottom line is that Jamie Dimon and J.P. Morgan, or Lloyd Blankfein or Goldman Sachs, or any of these, do not exist to accomplish societal goals. They're not there to serve the government. They're there to make profits. And we shouldn't pretend that there's anything other than that, which is why that deference to Wall Street, when they gave these banks this money as part of the bailout, they needed to have conditions. They needed to have incentives. But what they did, and what I heard over and over again, when I said, hey, we need to have some conditions here, we need some transparency here, the attitude in government from a lot of these people who went through the revolving door and came from Wall Street was, no, 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 we don't want to do that. We can just trust them. They're going to do the right thing. They would never embarrass themselves. They would never risk their reputations. And that's just a dead wrong way to look at it. They're going to seek out profit. They've proven that over and over again, any place that they can find it. And it's our job as a government to break them up so they can't do that damage. And then if we're going to give them a bailout, we're going to help them out, we need to direct what they do very specifically, or don't be surprised what happens.
All right. If that's your response to the, quote, good guys on Wall Street, what about the good public servants down in Washington? During the crisis, Tim Geithner was your nemesis, I guess we can call him that. Who were the good players? And who are the good players?
I mean, I wouldn't call him a nemesis. He is a product of an incredibly broken system. And there are a lot of people that have the same problem of that same worldview where they view everything through Wall Street tinted glasses. But I certainly, and in my book, talk about some people who I think were heroic, who put their jobs above what was in their best interest. I think Elizabeth Warren demonstrated resolve throughout the crisis, really going after and on a quest for the truth, even when exposing that truth hurt her own chances of getting the Consumer Protection Directorship. I saw some really talented people inside these regulators at the Federal Reserve, at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. You know, not necessarily the ones calling the shots, but people within those organizations. And that was instrumental in blunting some of the potential damage for TARP. You know, one of the programs, the PPIP program, was going to be a $1 trillion program and had no conditions. It was a playground for fraud. And Treasury was just going forward with it. And we were able to help block that by working with people at the Fed, at the FRBNY, who they needed to run that program. And those guys were heroes as well, I think.
And what about when you listen to the two presidential candidates, President Barack Obama and Mitt Romney? When you hear them speak about Wall Street and the banks, what do you like, what do you dislike?
Well, I think the rhetoric might be different, but the end result is nearly exactly the same, which is that neither one is addressing and willing to take on the problem of too big to fail banks. And frankly, I think that shows the control and power that exists in Washington that comes from Wall Street. And frankly, the only way we're going to change this conversation, the only way this debate is ever going to change, it's got to be a ground up. Whether you call it Occupy on the left or Tea Party on the right or everyone in between, There has to be direct political pressure to get our candidates to recognize this problem and insist that they change that problem, or they're not going to get our votes. And kind of what I hope to do with this book is to try to bring some real hard evidence of the problems of our system so people can arm themselves with that and work to making the necessary changes so we can go back to capitalism. So people can make money based on whether their company is good or bad, making good decisions or bad decisions, and not based on a government subsidy that's really screwed things up before and is going to make a much bigger mess of it next time.
This market is
stock picker's market.
Stocks have rallied this year.
We're coming into a Monday where we're going to